I know, Lois. I'm very sorry. I have another pair in my office.
Well, I better get them for you. I'll meet you at the studio.
Imagine being the face of a hero, America's first on-screen Superman, and then dying alone, forgotten by the very town that made you famous. George Reeves inspired millions, yet his death was shrouded in silence and mystery. No Hollywood stars, no cameras, just whispers. But now the truth is finally coming to light, and it's far darker than anyone expected. Was it really suicide, or something much worse? Stick with us as we unravel the chilling truth behind George Reeves's death, because the mystery is finally solved, and it's not what you want to hear. George Reeves, born George Kaffir Brewer on January 5, 1914, in Woolstock, Iowa, began life far from the glitz of fame. When he was still a toddler, his parents separated, and his mother, Helen, moved him from place to place, Kentucky, Illinois, and finally California, searching for stability. Helen remarried a man named Frank Basolo, who adopted George and gave him his last name. Years later, George learned the painful truth: Frank was alive the entire time. That betrayal cut deep and shaped the man he would become. Despite a turbulent childhood, George found purpose in performance. He loved music, theater, and anything that allowed him to escape. After graduating high school, he enrolled at Pasadena Junior College, then moved on to the prestigious Pasadena Playhouse, where he discovered not just acting but love. It was there that he met his future wife, Ilonora Needles. They married in 1940, but like so much in George's life, the marriage didn't last. They divorced a decade later. His big Hollywood break came with a minor role in the 1939 epic Gone with the Wind. It wasn't a major part, but it was enough to get him noticed. Soon after, he signed with Warner Brothers, changed his name to George Reeves, and began landing roles. Unfortunately, most were in low-budget B-movies that did little to elevate his career. A stint at 20th Century Fox offered brief hope, but it fizzled just as quickly. Then came World War II. In 1943, George enlisted in the Army Air Forces. He starred in Winged Victory, both the play and the film, and produced training films for fellow soldiers. When the war ended, George returned to Hollywood with new skills and determination. But by then, the industry had changed. Roles were few, opportunities were limited, and he even resorted to digging cesspools to make ends meet. In 1951, a new opportunity arrived, one that would change his life and define his legacy. George was offered the lead role in the television series Adventures of Superman. Television wasn't respected at the time, and George still had dreams of movie stardom, but the series took off. And overnight, George Reeves became a household name. To children across America, he wasn't just playing Superman, he was Superman. Behind the cape, George was in crisis. His contract with the show barred him from taking on other acting roles, leaving him hopelessly typecast. No one in Hollywood could see past the superhero, where still, the pay was dismal. Despite being adored by millions, George wasn't earning enough to live the life people assumed he had. He was famous but financially stuck, desperate to reinvent himself. George created a show of his own, an original project titled Port of Entry. He wrote the script and envisioned filming episodes in exotic locations like Mexico and Hawaii. He wanted to show the world he could be more than just the Man of Steel. But Hollywood turned its back. No studio wanted to fund the series. His dream was rejected before it even had a chance to begin. At the same time, The Adventures of Superman was floundering. Producers couldn't find anyone to replace him. Realizing just how vital he was, they offered George a massive raise, $5,000 a week to return. It was a generous offer, especially for a show that filmed just a few weeks of the year. Still, George was torn. He was 45 years old, tired of the role, and longing for something more. But financial pressure and lack of options led him back to the Cape. Production began for a new season. Writers returned, costumes were updated, and George prepared to fly again privately. However, things were falling apart. He had recently ended a long, complicated affair with Toni Manx, the wife of powerful MGM executive Eddie Manx, a man rumored to have connections to organized crime. George was now engaged to Leonore Lemon, a glamorous and unpredictable socialite. The couple had planned to marry on June 19, 1959, and take a honeymoon in Tijuana. But tragedy struck just days before the wedding in the early morning hours of June 16, 1959. George Reeves was found dead in his Benedict Canyon home with a gunshot wound to the head. His fiancée and several guests were downstairs at the time. Leonore Lemon claimed she was in the living room when the gunshot rang out, but others said she came rushing downstairs, repeating, "Tell them I was down here." The official cause of death was ruled a suicide, but the case never sat right. The pistol found at the scene had no fingerprints. There was no gunpowder residue on George's hands, and although 3 shots were fired, witnesses only heard 1. The fatal bullet lodged in the ceiling, with 2 more found on the floor. There were no signs of forced entry, no sign of a struggle, only confusion. George's mother, Helen Basolo, refused to believe he had taken his own life. She hired famed attorney Jerry Gisler to reopen the investigation. A second autopsy was conducted, and it revealed bruises on George's body, never previously reported. Still, with no eyewitnesses and no hard evidence, the case went cold. Eventually, even Gisler dropped the case, stating he was convinced it had been suicide. But not everyone agreed. Actor Rory Calhoun, one of George's close friends, famously said, "No one in Hollywood believed the suicide story." Stars like Gig Young and Alan Ladd echoed his doubt. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some believed that George had been killed in a fit of jealousy, either by Leonore or by someone acting on behalf of Eddie Manx, furious over George ending his affair with Toni. What happened next only deepened the mystery. George Reeves's funeral, held on July 1, 1959, at the Wayside Chapel of the Gates Funeral Home in Los Angeles, was heartbreakingly small. There were no crowds, no cameras, no stars, only a few close friends, including Noel Neill, Don Durr, and Gig Young, came to pay respects. The absence of Hollywood's elite was glaring. Some insiders claimed that people were actively warned not to attend, that the whole industry was afraid to be associated with the scandal. The silence at his funeral became symbolic. Hollywood was burying more than a man. They were burying a problem, a controversy, a potential scandal too big to handle. And in that silence, George Reeves was erased, but not entirely. In 2006, the film Hollywoodland brought George's story back into the public eye, starring Ben Affleck as George Reeves, Diane Lane as Toni Mannix, and Adrian Brody as a fictional private investigator. The movie explored multiple theories surrounding George's mysterious death. One theory pointed to Leonore Lemon, another to Eddie Manx and his alleged mafia connections, a third suggested Toni herself, heartbroken over losing George. And finally, the most tragic theory of all, that George, deeply depressed and feeling trapped, had truly taken his own life. The film didn't pick a side, but it forced the world to ask questions again. Then, in 2023, George Reeves briefly appeared once more, this time as a CGI Superman in the DC film The Flash. Though intended as a tribute, the moment stirred mixed emotions among fans who felt that Reeves' real-life tragedy deserved more than a fleeting digital cameo. Yet, George Reeves was always more than just an actor in a cape. He was a man of integrity, known around the studio as Honest George, the people's friend. He treated everyone with respect, from studio heads to prop boys. He never smoked around children. In fact, he quit smoking altogether because he didn't want to set a bad example. He maintained a clean, scandal-free public image, not for publicity, but because he knew children saw him as a real-life Superman. He even served as national chairman for the Myasthenia Gravis Foundation, raising awareness for the debilitating disease. He never sought praise, he just wanted to help. Behind the camera, George was humble, kind, and deeply human. His fans adored him. His colleagues respected him, and those closest to him never forgot the man behind the cape. George Reeves was a man trapped between the persona the world loved and the identity he could never escape. Fame gave him everything and then took it all away. He tried to fly higher, to be more than a costume, but the world wouldn't let him. Today, fans still watch reruns of The Adventures of Superman. They still smile at the sight of him flying across black and white screens. But now they understand the weight he carried, the battle he fought behind the scenes, the quiet tragedy of a man who inspired millions and died wondering if he mattered at all. But he did matter to every child who believed in hope, courage, and doing the right thing. George Reeves was Superman, and he always will be. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. We bring you the untold truths behind the stars you thought you knew. Hit the bell so you never miss a hidden Hollywood mystery. Thanks for watching.